Hi there, this is Dr. Bumni Aloaba, the food addiction coach, and welcome to my first interview. So I'm really, really excited. And I just thought, yeah, just intuitively, I just thought we need to start getting people's stories out and, how this relates to food and addiction and other forms of eating disorders, such as binge eating, compulsive eating, emotional eating. And the story goes a lot deeper than just this two-dimensional, you need to lose weight and stop eating. And, as a food addiction counsellor, trauma is one thing that keeps popping up. And it's, I think, part of a lot of people's narrative with some form of eating disorder. So I want to hand over to this lovely lady, Claudia Chapman, who is an empowerment coach, intuitive healer, and Reiki master, who has a really interesting story to tell. And it's going to be informal, everybody. So just listen in and take in, and it's really, really interesting. But for me, trauma is something that could be physical, psychological, it could be acute, it could be sexual. And the statistics, and I was absolutely shocked with my training, that one of our lecturers did state that the research shows that with binge eaters and bulimics, that there's an 80% prevalence of sexual trauma, which I was shocked about. And it just shows you how, how it's just missed out in stories, in the press about eating disorders. And it really underpins a lot of situations. So I'll hand over to Claudia, and I'd love to hear from you, and so would all of us. Thanks, Claudia.
Thank you. Okay, so so actually, I'll just start by saying that I always believed that an eating disorder was either bulimia or anorexia. And if you didn't have bulimia or anorexia, then you didn't have an eating disorder.
Yeah.
But I think what was missed for me, and the reason why I didn't really think I had an eating disorder, was because obviously it wasn't one of those two things. For me, it was greed. It was filling a void.
Yeah.
So for many, many years, I could eat what I liked. I could eat what I liked. And I didn't put on weight. So it wasn't visible to the outside world what I was doing. And I was somebody that would binge eat, but I wouldn't make myself ill. I would just eat because it just didn't sort of go onto the body. So, binging crisps and chocolate and filling that void. And I did that basically all of my life. And then when I got to 35, the kind of, the hormones changed. I had a couple of children, and suddenly, okay, so I'm going through this change, and the weight is showing. But the mindset of understanding that was kind of like, the more that you think about stopping something, the more that you do it, because you're kind of pressuring yourself into stopping that situation.
And what were you feeling when you did binge and you did eat? Did you feel like it felt abnormal? You said it was filling a void. Can you describe that in more detail? Was it a feeling of emptiness?
Yeah, the void for me is the trauma. So the void for me is the trauma. And I, as you mentioned earlier, the one thing that often gets overlooked is quite often where the traumas come from. And so for me, I was sexually abused between the ages of 11 to 14, excuse me, at school. And I kind of compartmentalized and fragmented my life in disassociating from that. So it was like, that was something that happened to me, move on, and then carried on with my life. So it was quite interesting how I'd kind of just not realized that. But when I started coaching other women and hearing their stories, the penny started to drop into me. And I realized that there is definitely a correlation between sexual trauma and eating disorders. There's many obviously different traumas that can ignite you into an eating disorder, and you're the specialist in that. But all I could do was sort of equate and start to put that together.
Yeah. I'm glad that you sort of mentioned the dissociation, that and many women experience trauma in that way, that they completely kind of dissociate, that it's not part of them. And that's something that's, you know, is really, really apparent. And it's we'll talk some more, but I just think that's something that could be sexual, it could be physical, it could be, for instance, myself, as I just said to you now, that, you know, once I spoke to you last week, you know, I realized how much my bullying, when I was bullied, you know, affected me, but I dissociated that. So, you know, that's brought that back to, you know, and accepting it and moving forward, and self-forgiveness was, you know, really, really important to me. So yeah, carry on your story. It's exciting.
So yes, I started to realize that, I mean, obviously I knew when I was binge eating that it wasn't right, but I wasn't really sure what the trigger was. You know, why was I doing this? And until I could really realize what the trigger was, I was going to continue with doing that.
Yeah.
So what happened for me was that, as I say, through coaching other women and doing the work and etc., what was slowly bubbling up in me was this feeling of the dark shadows. I was doing a lot of work on the dark shadows around rejection and abandonment. So I was kind of feeling the feels, doing the work, everything was coming up. Why do I feel rejected and abandoned? So it was a process. And then what happened to me was that around the narrative of what was going on for consent for children to have vaccinations without parental consent, it triggered in me, what else are we giving our, you know, sort of authorities control over our children for, and what are we giving that consent to? And it triggered my trauma of sexual abuse that I'd kind of neatly packed away and said, I don't, you know, that's got nothing to do with me anymore. And what
That's
happened was,
so that just, that was that one particular, that scenario just brought it all back up.
Absolutely. About 6 weeks ago, whenever it was, when they announced that, I went into just a very, very strong feeling of release. And I knew that I was getting very angry with my family. I'd been pushing them away. I mean, I pushed my family away for many, many years, but it was becoming clearer and clearer what was happening. And what happened was I literally had this whoosh of energy come through me and realized that I had to speak out about my sexual abuse. I then went on to create a case around my sexual abuse, and women are coming forward, and I'm still on that case. But what happened was this massive release of shame.
Yeah,
I had absolute massive release of shame, and it was huge. It was absolutely huge. And at the same time, as this started to happen about 6 weeks ago, I'd sort of always been living with quite a large belly as a menopausal woman who'd had a baby over 40, or two babies at 40, or one at 38, one at 40. And I sort of had this belly, kept on making excuses for it, was still eating all the wrong things for me. Inflammation in the body was very present. And actually, the same time that I sort of declared this sexual abuse and was releasing the shame, the weight started to fall off my body.
Interesting.
I started noticing on my wrists and on my ankles and on my face, and then my belly was going down and down and down. So I thought, okay, what's different? What's going on? So as I'm going through the process of releasing the shame and helping other women and building this case, the weight was coming off, and I wasn't binging. And I wasn't eating the foods I shouldn't be eating. And I was able to say to myself, enough. It was like, enough. So when we keep things pushed down, and obviously I work with the chakras.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We're constantly filling the void into those chakras that we need to fill.
And blocking those energies, aren't we? We're blocking those energies.
We're blocking those energies. So I was blocking it with all the shitty food, you know, the inflammation and the food that's just really bad for my gut. And obviously our immune system is our gut, our solar plexus is our power, it's our warrior, it's our goddess warrior archetype. So the connection between all of those things, kind of, instead of just kind of being fragmented as well, that all came together for me. It's like
started to align.
That's my center, that's my power source. And it was very, very clear. I realized that, oh, okay. So the food is my filling hole.
It's your coping. Yeah, it's your coping mechanism. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I loved what you said was, you know, shame is something that, you know, many women struggle with. And it's shame about their weight, shame about being bad moms, bad parents, bad this, we're not good enough, we're not attractive enough, we're not intelligent enough. And it's huge. Shame is something that fills, a lot of people's lives. And, being able to let go of that is so much self-care, so much self-forgiveness, and we carry that for unnecessarily. And how you've talked about releasing that shame is sometimes it's a declaration. It's like, it's enough. I did the mirror work an awful lot, day after day after day when I was coming into recovery. And it was like, I forgive myself for, I'm proud of myself, and I'd speak to myself in the mirror and just say, I forgive myself. For, every day it was something different. And, it would come up and I'd be crying and everything else, and I'd be releasing it, and that did help an awful lot with weight. But it's interesting how you talked about how the weight started to, to shift. And many women who, have been abused or don't feel worthy put on the weight, and it's almost like a protective mechanism. But as you say, we talk about the chakras. I'm a Reiki master, and I do believe in that. And I'm actually taking the course on advanced chakra cleansing, because I do believe all this is now necessary, that we need to go into this fourth, fifth dimension, to help women, whether it's weight loss, whether it's alcohol, whether it's any addiction, any trauma, to get into really good recovery. We need to use all our well-being tools. And so, I thank you for bringing this forward, because it's something that nobody talks about, in the weight loss industry. Do we talk about shame? Do we talk about trauma? No. Somebody walks through my door, there's a history there. There's a history. There's a history that you have to, gently kind of unpeel layer by layer by layer with compassion and care. And that's another thing that you've had that sense of self-forgiveness and that feeling that, you care for yourself. That's enough. I really care about me. And for a woman to go forward and say, I care enough about myself to give myself self-care, to give myself what I need to fill that hole, that's not going to be food. It's going to be filled with nourishing foods, nourishing, abilities to, cleanse, and forgive myself.
Absolutely. You brought up, I am enough, not feeling good enough is the main reason that we do many things. But the reason that we don't feel good enough is because we have experienced some sort of trauma. So it's quite interesting, there's three parts to trauma. There's, generational, gestational, and experiential, right? And to be honest, we've all probably experienced one of those, right? In our lives, to different degrees. And then, so that sort of sits in your base chakra. That's your foundation, right? That's your security. When that gets dropped, you then move into the shame. You move into the gut, into the shame, and you hold the shame. And you hold the shame and you hold the shame because you don't feel good enough, because you don't want to hurt your family and friends. If you release or say what you feel, it could impact.
Absolutely. Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah. So, we're left sitting in that. And we could be left sitting in that feeling. For me, I was 36 years. 36 years of filling the void, and my addictions, I'm still not over all my addictions, but not just food. You mentioned about alcohol. Mine was, smoking and maybe sexual addictions because of the nature of my trauma. You go on to be quite promiscuous. I had quite a promiscuous life, and it's all about that void filling. It's continuous void filling. So it's we're at a stage, I think it's a time in our lives, I think many women get to the point of menopause in their 50s where things do start to shift physically, hormonally, and then we start doing the work. And this is why it takes so long to come to this point and go, I'm ready. I am enough. I'm ready. And that's
and done with everybody's thoughts, and you're not worried about validation. And as you said, coming up to sort of perimenopause, menopause is an important time. It's another big life events, it's the empty nest, your children have gone, what am I going to do with my life, that kind of thing. And that again is like another shake up. And it's, well, what is going on with my body? What is going with how I'm feeling? And women in sort of, menopause, the 40s, 50s, do sort of say to me, I don't know why I'm feeling so guilty and so ashamed, and I don't know why I'm doing what I'm doing. And it is kind of unlayering and layering. And many women actually experience an eating disorder in their adolescence, lay dormant again, so that shame's still there. It comes out again, with that hormonal shift again. So it's, again, the body knows, our bodies register it all. And I think that's something that I want to get out to the audience, is that no matter what we feel, and we think, oh, we're going to just dumb it down, and we're going to dumb it down with food, that it's there. Our bodies, our muscles, our cells is still recording that, is still replaying the shame, the guilt, the trauma. And it is now time, to release. There's so much chaos in the world right now. There really, really is. It's almost like everything needs a big shake up. And I think this is not a taboo subject anymore. This is something that, we need to talk about openly. Because, as I say, in the fellowship, for instance, there's you're as thick as your, secrets. You're as sick as your secrets. You're as sick as your guilt. So, it's time for that. So how would you work with a client, as you say, with shame?
Okay, so the way that I work is that I will talk very thoroughly with a client and find out and ask all the very basic questions. In the first sort of session, I'll go through all the basic questions about, I'll approach it holistically. So I will ask about food, I will ask about medication, I will ask about family history, any trauma, any current trauma, any trauma in the family growing up, any generational trauma, any past life trauma, if you've done any work around that. And very interestingly, because I approach it holistically to find out what's going on with the whole person, by the end of the first session, it becomes very, very clear to me where the energy is stuck in the body. Now, the other thing that comes up a lot for women is getting the throat chakra ends up being very closed, because when we're in shame and when we are told to not speak up and when we're told to keep quiet and not to express how we feel, what happens is the throat tightens and it all gets pushed back down again. So I work a lot with women and noticing where we need to release. And so, quite often it's in the throat or it's in the lower chakras and it's in the trauma areas. And then we start to work through and out. So we kind of do an analysis, and then I ask the client, where do you want to work? Where do you feel? And very quickly, the client thinks they've come with a presenting problem, like my back hurts.
Absolutely, yeah.
Presenting problem, and by the time they've left, they've gone, oh shit, okay, this is why my back hurts, because I'm holding trauma in my lower chakras, or I saw something and said something and was told to keep quiet, that's why I've got swollen glands, or I had glandular fever as a teenager, right? So I will then use Reiki and crystals and Tibetan bowl healing to then work through the body, and we'll use mantras.
Lovely.
So I do sessions at an hour and a half, or you can buy packages. I'm actually going to be doing a program starting in the new year, which incorporates the Reiki healing. I do something called Body Chakra Dance, where we dance through the chakras and we move out of the head and into the body. So we stop overthinking.
Absolutely. And that's the mind-body connection, isn't it? That's kind of getting that mind-body connection going, because
all the top trauma experts, Volk and Porges and Levine, they're all talking now about the fact that we need to use somatics, that we need to be using the body, yoga, breathwork, dancing. We need to be coming out of all the, it's good to talk, it's amazing to talk, but as long as you're seen and heard. But we also need to be moving through the body to release the trauma, and that's why go and see a psychotherapist or psychologist, and you can talk and talk and talk and talk, and then you come out still feeling like, why hasn't anything shifted? right? So there's the realization and the understanding, the same way I always knew about nutrition and food. Doesn't matter how much you know about something, it's like, how do you then, you know, move something,
Incorporate it. Yeah,
incorporate it
absolutely.
and shift? So
Yeah,
just because you have the knowledge doesn't mean that you actually
totally in agreement. Yeah,
I mean,
totally in
I
agreement.
definitely love food. I just thought of that something I really just want to presence. I know a lot about nutrition. I know a lot about nutrition. Know a lot about gut health, but I was punishing myself still with things that weren't good for me and doing it
Absolutely
secretly.
true. Yeah, I
You know, in
really.
the supermarket car park, 4 eclairs, wolf down, come home and make cake, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Because of
that was
time.
me. That was me. It was like, 5, 6 packets of Haribos, no problem. I knew what I needed to eat. I knew what was healthy. I knew what was unhealthy. And that's what makes me a little bit annoyed when people say, well, kind of the public and the press go, well, the person knows what's healthy and what's unhealthy. They should know. They should just say no and eat the right thing. It's nothing to do with that. People talk about intuitive eating. Listen, when it's all down here and you've dumbed down your emotions and everything else, your brain is not going, oh, I want the healthy thing. Your brain is now wired to have something that's going to give you that massive dopamine hit to lull you back into, that sense of, false sense of security and calm. And so, I reach time and time again for, the ultra processed foods. So it was nothing to do with my intelligence. It was nothing to do with what I knew about nutrition or anything like that. It's what I needed to kind of make me feel safe again. Fill that void. That made me feel safe. I didn't have to think about the other stuff. And my body knew that it needed that for that time. So I'm in complete agreement with that.
It's interesting because we know that I don't think our body needs it. I think our body lies to us and we lie to
Yeah.
ourselves because this is up here, this is the cognitive thinking, and this is where the trauma is, and there's a bloody big space in between.
Yeah.
What you do is you go, yeah, I want those eclairs. And your and your waistline and your hips are like, and your back are collapsing, and you're still going, I want it, I want it, I want it. So you fill it to here, haven't dealt with down here.
Yeah.
And there's this disconnect.
Yes.
There's this
But that's the
disconnect.
disease of addiction, though, isn't it? That it tells you that you haven't got the problem. And no matter how much you want to rationalize and intellectualize it, your brain is now wired to kind of go, we need it, whether you like it or not. So, we've got the holistic, we've got the addiction pathway, we've got the holistic thing. And I think all that combined is just, getting somebody well. We need to know about the neuroscience. We need to know about the holistic side, the chakras and everything like that. That's why you're kind of giving me goosebumps, because yeah, I think we're a kind of a new breed of coach, really. We're embracing every single dimension of that person, to get them, move them into wellness, mental, physical, spiritual, physiological wellness.
Absolutely. And so in my program, I'm working with 10 other women as well, so that everybody gets the ability to be able to get what they need, because it might not be just one person that can help with that holistic approach to well-being. And as
totally agree with that one.
You need help from different places. So, I'm trying to incorporate in my program this idea that, everybody can come together to help in a holistic way to support these women through.
Yeah, I'm a big believer. I put a post on the other day saying that, a child needs, a village to raise them. So does somebody in who's recovering from trauma. That they need a village. They need the support from so many different areas that, it's not just from one person. No one person can give that person total support. And that's why I love building, buddies, helping someone to build a buddy system, trauma therapists, just all the right people coming in. So again, I'm just completely aligned with what you're saying. I love it.
It's interesting that you've just presenced there about community and about like living in the old days where we used to have community. And, you know, there was less addiction when we lived in community, but, you know, that might be a whole other subject we can talk about another time. But, you know, having that onion of community, you know, where the women supported the mother with the children and etc., and the men went out and did the, you know, okay, we might not want to go back to like Neanderthal times, but having community where we all hold each other. And that's coming out more and more now. People are creating more communities. Maybe we will have in the future go back to living in more tribal you know, setups. Maybe that's the answer. But if we can't go back to setup, maybe we can just have these tribal setups.
Yeah, exactly. You know, I think community is key. I mean, connection is opposite of addiction, that we need connection. With any addiction, you know, we are in isolation, whether it's enforced or not, that, you know, we are isolated. So we need people to tell us that, you know, we're okay, we're going to be okay. We need people who've probably gone through this before, and we see that they're getting well, and we need that hope, that, you know, that experience, strength, and hope is experienced in groups, in community, in sharing, you know, and saying it's okay, you know, having a community saying that you're all right, you're supported, and that's very, very important. And you're not the only one.
You know, during the case that I'm on, I get calls on a regular basis from women who've experienced abuse in the same situation as me. And 2 days ago, I had a woman, and she was completely shocked that anyone else had the same situation as her. She's never told anyone in her whole life. So every time I get that call, and every time another woman goes, me too, it's a win.
Yeah.
Because you're bringing them in to being seen and heard and held.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a really important part of my work, is that I run circles, and it's about women being able to show up and be seen and heard without being judged, without being given advice. You know, it's just coming and sharing and letting it out is as important as receiving advice. So yeah.
And it's the element of not being judged, as you just said. I've just picked that up, that, you know, we're not here to judge people anymore. You know, nobody knows, you know, Joe Bloggs' story down the road, or Jane Smith's story. You know, somebody comes to me and there's a whole history. And when you get to kind of experience that, you're kind of humbled as well, you know, and there's a reason why, you know, a person will come to you. You know, there's no coincidence why somebody might choose you or might choose me, is that they'll resonate with something that, you know, you've gone through yourself. So, you know, I'm here, I'm learning all the time, but I'm healing all the time when I'm helping other people. And that's how, you know, groups work and communities work, that it's a symbiotic, you know, relationship, and a nurturing as well. I think it's getting back to that compassionate nurturing. There's so much judgment out there. We just have to just keep, you know, speaking out and speaking our truth. And that's what I'm starting to do. And again, you know, going into the public eye sort of the next few months, yeah, I start getting filled up with all that kind of, oh gosh, imposter syndrome, and, you know, who me? But hey, you know what? There's lots of people out there that want to hear my story so that they can get well as well. And it's not being egotistic or anything like that. You know, I won't put myself out there if I didn't think I could help other people. So, and I'm really proud that, you know, you're doing the same too. I'd like to just go on, yeah.
So our stories are really important, and that's what helps more than sitting in a office. You know, it's being seen and heard by other women, and knowing that you're not the only one. Yeah. The whole idea of the Me Too, whether it's sexual abuse or alcohol abuse or food abuse, it's saying, hey, me too. I hear you, sister. And that's how Fabulous. We do it.
And as you said, you know, you talked about, and there's a big thing in the media at the moment about therapists, and, you know, that you have to be a therapist, that you have to be real trained counselor. But I've got to the point where I'm looking at the NHS is falling to bits. We need to kind of empower the community to be able to, you know, train as many people with just simple strategies, you know, just members of the public, just to be able to help somebody with a mental health issue. It's almost like first defense, and it's almost like we're not being given that permission to do it, you know. And that's what I want to get out there, is that, you know, anybody can, you know, train to be, say, a food addiction coach, or, you know, an empowerment coach, you know, which you can help them do as well. And that as long as we're taking back our power, really, and taking back that sovereignty, I think is really important for the
anyone,
community. Exactly.
finding anyone that you resonate with that can help you.
Yeah, that's it.
That's it. That's simple. You know, you can just find the person that you resonate with, that's experienced what you've experienced and has come through the other side. And I think that's the important point.
Yeah.
I can't really help women until I've got to that point myself. And I really felt the piece for me was overcoming the shame. And I think shame is the release. Shame is the release. So I would really just like to emphasize that finding the release of shame in whatever way you get to that point is the key.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think shame is something that it's an emotion. It's again, it's something that can be released. It's about self-forgiveness, you know, not feeling judged. Telling another human being as well, I think, is something that helps release shame as well as the chapter.
Absolutely.
And the
thing about shame is it's more than an emotion. So guilt is an emotion. Shame is an actual embodied feeling. It's an embodied, it's in your, it becomes like, I don't know if it's in your DNA, it becomes who you are because it embeds itself into your body. So it's not just an emotion. I don't just feel ashamed. I was living in shame. And in order to stop myself from feeling the shame, I would have addictions. And we have addictions, right? But guilt is something we can overcome because it is just a surface emotion. Well, not just a surface emotion, but it's an emotion. So you can feel guilty, but you become shame.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
It's true.
Sort of living in the shame.
We live in our shame, and then we live in a shit show of shame. And the more it goes deeper and deeper.
Yeah. So where do you go from here now? So it's all, you know, sort of 2022. What are your plans? You talked about a group, which I'm going to get details from you in a minute. So where are you going from here?
So what I wanted to do is I wanted to culminate all my work in a holistic way. So I've created a Find Your Inner Goddess transformational coaching program. It's a 6-month program, like that involves one-to-one coaching, involves group work, involves a Facebook group, involves bringing 10 other women in to help with that, therapists, healers, intuitives, sound healers, etc., to help you to embody that, or the women to embody that. And it ends in a retreat in the mountains in the Alpujarras in Spain.
Amazing. Is that going to be middle sort of summer 2022?
That's June 13th to 19th. It was completely fully booked back in 2 years ago when we started all this COVID stuff. But I've got 10, there's 10 spaces have already gone, but I'm looking for 13 women who want to do the whole thing. You want to do the whole program, start to finish. So they're held. So no other program really offers you one-to-one training as well in a group, and gives you a retreat at the end of it to climax. And I will also hold the women for a month after.
That sounds absolutely fabulous. That sounds superb. What was the name of the group again?
Well, the program's called Find Your Inner Goddess Transformational Coaching Program and Retreat. And I can put the link in for you or send you the link to add in.
I'll pop the link in. Yeah.
If you're interested in joining that would, just contact me. There's still a few spaces left.
That sounds yummy.
But you can also see me on a one-to-one basis. I do what I call Reiki life coaching, which is an 1.5-hour session of really getting to the root of your problem and giving you Reiki and, like I said, holistic therapy.
Fabulous.
And also I do goddess chakra dance workshops. And in the new year, I'm intending to do a sort of hybrid, in-person, sort of more of a class, so that you can join.
Is that going to be online? Is that online?
Yeah, I will do that online and in person. So it's a hybrid.
Fabulous. So I was just going to say to you, what would be, for any advice, what is the top thing that you would give? What advice would you give to a woman who is struggling with guilt, with shame, with trauma?
I would say reach out. Like just reach out to wherever you connect energetically. Like there's so many women on the internet now who can help you. If you resonate with myself, great. If you don't, just find where you resonate, follow that person, see where, if you can align with them, and just reach out and just say me too. I'm always available for you know, sort of a discovery call, just to have a chat. There's, you know, you don't have to buy into me, but just if you just want to just release that shit, if you just want to say, hey, you know what, I've been sexually
release that shit.
Release that shit. I've been sexually, the minute you say I was sexually abused, I promise you, right, that your world will change. Last night, literally, I had a woman who was hanging in the balance of whether she should come forward with the case that I'm on. She's gone up and down because she's in a shame hangover. She didn't know for 50 flipping years there was anybody else out there with her. But just by gently having that conversation, she's allowed herself to release. And now she's like, yeah, I'm ready. Now, obviously, I'm not working with her. She's a part of my case. But I can work with other women outside of the case that I'm on, because that's a legal thing. So if anybody feels that they just want to say, yeah, me too, what was your experience? Do you want to, you know, I'm quite happy to share my experience in any detail.
Because so many want to hear it. Yeah, so many people want to hear your story, and you know, getting out there next year was so powerful.
1 in 2 women have been sexually abused. The only reason it's 1 in 3 is because that's the amount of women that come forward.
It's shocking, isn't it? Yeah, I was absolutely shocked when I heard the statistics. And that's when it opened my eyes to trauma as a whole, but what we as women, you know, do experience and we don't talk about. And what level of sexual abuse, it's still sexual abuse, doesn't matter. So that's why I'm so glad that you've come on, you know, onto this session today, because again, these are deeper things that people really don't want to talk about. But you know, I want to talk about addiction and demystify what addiction is. You know, all these are the taboo subjects that people kind of cower, and just bring all this into the light and go, let's demystify it, let's see it for what it is, you know, and you know, stop all the, you know, taboos, you know, around it. So I'm really, really glad that you came on today. And as I said, I'm going to pop the details on when I post this. But thank you so, so much, Claudia. And you know, I will be definitely, you'll be definitely on our sessions when I start running my courses next year as well. So thank you very much. And for everybody out there, if you are struggling at all, I'm going to leave the details, as I said. You know, contact Claudia. I think it's very, very powerful. And especially at this time, you know, we need women like Claudia who will just help us get through whatever deep, as you said, deep shame shit that we're going through. And it needs to be released, whether it's for weight or whether it's for our psychological health, for our sense of self-worth. We need Claudia. So take care. Thank you. Thanks, Claudia. You're welcome. Thank you.